Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that's been causing quite a stir. Corporate inversions.
Yeah, they've definitely been making headlines.
For sure. And it's one of those things that sounds super complicated, but it's actually not too hard to grasp the basics, at least.
Right, at its core, it's pretty straightforward.
Basically, we're talking about a company, usually a big multinational corporation, that decides to relocate its headquarters to another country.
A country with, let's just say, a friendlier tax environment.
Exactly. Lower taxes. But here's the thing. Even though they move their official address, most of their operations, their business, their employees often stay right here in the U.S.
You got it. And that's where things get interesting. Because on the surface, it might seem like, well, good for them. They found a way to pay less in taxes.
Right, like a smart business move.
But it's not that simple. These inversions have a ripple effect on the U.S. economy, and that's what we're going to unpack today.
We're going to dig into the impact on everything from our tax revenue to the competitiveness of American companies on a global scale.
And I think you'll find some of the angles are pretty surprising.
Definitely a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hot-button issue for sure.
It is. So let's kick things off with the most obvious question. When a company pulls a move like this, what happens to the money that would have gone into U.S. coffers?
The tax revenue question. It's a big one, and the short answer is yes. The U.S. Treasury takes a hit when a company inverts. They're basically shifting a chunk of their tax obligations to another country.
And how much are we talking here? Give us a sense of the scale.
It can be substantial. Take the case of Medtronic, for example. They're a medical device company, pretty big player. Back in 2015, they decided to invert to Ireland.
Okay.
Estimates at the time suggested that this single move cost the U.S. Treasury about $100 million a year in lost tax revenue.
$100 million per year.
Yep. And that's just one company. So you can extrapolate from there and see how this can add up pretty quickly.
Wow. Yeah, that's not chump change. I mean, think about what $100 million could do here. That's money that could go towards schools, roads, infrastructure.
Exactly. It's a direct impact on public services, on the things that we rely on as a society.
Right. So that's the downside for the U.S. But I'm guessing there's a reason why companies are so eager to go through with these inversions. What's the upside for them?
Well, for the companies, it often boils down to, no surprise here, their bottom line.
Profit.
Exactly. Lower taxes mean higher profits, and higher profits usually mean happy shareholders.
So is it as simple as everyone wins except Uncle Sam?
Not quite. While inversions can boost shareholder wealth overall, the benefits aren't necessarily evenly distributed.
Oh, okay, elaborate on that.
Think about who typically holds the most stock in a company. It's often the wealthier investors. So they're the ones who tend to reap the biggest rewards from these maneuvers. And that raises some concerns about fairness and whether this is contributing to widening the gap between the haves and have-nots.
Interesting. So it's not as clear-cut as it might seem at first glance?
Nope. It's a lot more nuanced than that.
So we've got the impact on tax revenue, the potential for boosting shareholder wealth, though maybe not for everyone. What other angles should we be considering here?
Well, this is where it gets kind of ironic. One of the arguments in favor of inversions is that they can actually make U.S. companies more competitive globally.
Hold on. How does that work?
Think about it this way. When a U.S. company inverts and lowers its tax burden, it suddenly has more financial flexibility, more resources at its disposal.
Right.
So they can invest more in research and development, explore new markets, innovate, and all that good stuff.
I'm with you.
And that, in theory, allows them to go head-to-head with international competitors who might already be operating in countries with more favorable tax structures.
So the very act of seemingly turning their back on the U.S. could actually help them become stronger players on the world stage.
Yep, that's the paradox. It suggests that maybe the U.S. tax system is actually putting its own companies at a disadvantage.
Which leads us to the big, hairy question of tax reform.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If the U.S. wants to keep its top companies in the game and maintain a strong economic position, it needs to make sure its tax policies are attractive.
Competitive.
Exactly. Otherwise, we might see even more inversions down the line, which would further erode the tax base and potentially create an uneven playing field for domestic companies that choose to stay put.
So it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it?
It is. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Okay, let's try to summarize what we've learned today. We've talked about three key takeaways: the impact on U.S. tax revenue, the potential boost to shareholder wealth, but with questions about fairness, And this interesting idea that inversions might actually make U.S. companies more competitive globally.
Right, and all of that brings us to the core of the debate. How do we design a tax system that's both fair and competitive? How do we strike that balance between ensuring enough revenue to fund essential services and creating a business environment that keeps companies here, contributing to the U.S. economy?
It's a tough nut to crack. There's no magic formula.
Nope, no silver bullet.
But I think that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating, right? It forces us to grapple with these big questions, to really think about what we value as a society and how we want our economic system to function. If you were in charge, how would you approach this? It's a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.